So becoming UFC champion is one of the hardest things to do in combat sports, but there's only one other thing that is more difficult. Leaving a lasting legacy, leaving a tale of your entire career and how many championship defenses that you have on your resume. Defending your belt numerous times is way more difficult than just obtaining the championship belt. And with our current UFC champions that we have in the UFC right now, some of them are building towards having that legacy. And so what I wanted to do was look at every single current UFC champion and give their title reign a grade. I'm going to take into account how many defenses that they have they had good fights, were they dominant, were they not so dominant, and just overall give them a grade of their current reign. And so let's not waste any more time and let's get right into it. So as you guys can see, I have a black box right next to me. I'm going to unveil every single UFC champion, starting off with Flyweight, and give their overall championship reign a grade. Starting off with Flyweight, we do have Alexandre Pantoja, the current Flyweight champion, and so far his UFC reign has been very mid at best. Let's be real here, there's a pretty good argument that he lost to Steve Erceg in his last fight. He only has one title defense so far in his career against Brandon Royval, which he dominantly won, so that does earn him some plus points. But overall, Pantoja's reign has not really been anything beneficial to his career. Him winning the belt was a good moment, but other than that, his reign has been pretty much, I wouldn't call it lackluster, but it's not been anything too impressive. I think the win over Royval carries a lot of stock into my grade when it comes to Pantoja, but that Steve Erceg win, in quotation marks, really takes that down a notch. And even with Steve Erceg not being that highly ranked at flyweight and still getting a title shot and pretty much almost or really beating Pantoja, really takes this grade down a ton. I'm giving this just a C+ because of the Brandon Royval win, but other than that, Pantoja has not had a extremely dominant reign, neither a good one in terms of entertainment. His fight versus Royval was dominant, but it wasn't really entertaining, so he doesn't get any stock in terms of name value or excitement. Just overall, he is a pretty decent champion, and that's really about it. So he's a C+ for me. Moving on to bantamweight, obviously the champion right now is Sugar Sean O'Malley. He has one defense against Chito Vera in a very, very dominant performance. And right now it might be a little bit too early to give O'Malley a grade because he is only one fight deep into his championship reign. But right now he currently has no scheduled fights. He's taken some time off. He has, again, one defense over Chito Vera, which was very, very impressive. So that does give him some plus points. But I'm more so projecting into the future of his reign and how I think he's going to perform down the line. I think he will be a pretty awesome champion if he does continue to get finishes or have fun, exciting fights and dominant performances. But right now, there just really isn't enough meat on the bone to give him a really firm grade that I'm really confident in. I'm going to give him a B just purely based off of the Chito Vera performance, but that could go down, that could go up in the future. There's not much on here that I can really grade for Sean O'Malley, but I think right now him being a big name does carry some weight. He could improve his trash talk, we all know that, but overall, O'Malley is the ideal champion we want in the UFC. He can get finishes. He has a really good striking style. He can be entertaining when he is fighting in the octagon. And I still think O'Malley can improve to be a superstar if he just could improve his trash talk game. He needs really only one huge moment, one huge fight to, I wouldn't say put him on Conor McGregor levels, but to put him a little bit below Conor McGregor. He only needs that one super important fight. And I think in the future, we might get that, but as of right now, I can't put a grade on his current reign because that hasn't happened yet. So I'm going to give O'Malley just a firm B for now. It could be lower. You could argue it to be lower. You could argue it to be higher, but I think that one fight versus Chito Vera is enough to sell me to put him ahead of Alexandre Pantoja in terms of their championship grades. But we move on to featherweight, and the current champion right now is Ilia Topuria. Now, Ilia Topuria currently has no defenses. He's not being active at all, so I can't really give him a grade. So I kind of have to base this off of his Volk win and what he can do in the future. But currently, he simply just has no reign, but I really just can't bring myself to give him an F. I'm going to give him a D, but like, it doesn't really make any sense to give him a D because he doesn't have any reign. So I guess the best option would to give him just a NA, a no contest, a default, because there's really nothing here for Topuria because he hasn't fought at all. So I might actually have to grade him based off what he has done since he's been champion, which has been basically nothing. He's done some interviews, he's been out to Spain, but he hasn't done anything to cause any waves and make his name even bigger in the UFC. He's kind of, I wouldn't say gone dark since he's been champion, but he hasn't done really anything besides not fight. Like if Topuria went out here and after he beat Volk and he made some waves, made some headlines, made the news, did all of these things, improved his name value, trash talked online. If he did all of these things, then I would probably give him a higher grade. But since he's done pretty much none of it, then I can't really give him a good grade right now. A D is where he's at, with the potential to instantly jump up to an A if he does go out there and have a KO performance versus like a Max Holloway or something like that. Like if we see Volk in his next fight and he gets a KO win over Max Holloway, then I'm willing to give him a higher grade. But as of right now, he has no defenses. He has pretty much no championship reign. So there's nothing really here for Topuria besides just a flat out D, only because he hasn't done anything with his name value since becoming champion. But we move on to lightweight, and the current champion right now is Islam Makhachev. And I'm giving Islam, so far in his championship reign, I'm going to have to give him probably just a solid A. But before we move on to the next division, I want to shout out the Patreon just real quick. The Patreon is now live, and I can guarantee you it is worth your time to go check it out. We do fight reviews on there. You get the full card prediction videos 5 days early. You can even vote on which fights that I review for that week. I can guarantee you, go check it out. The link is in the top of the description. Please, it is worth your time. Go check it out. Now, the reason why I'm not giving him an A+ is because of the fact that he's looked kind of beatable in these last few fights. When he fought Poirier, there were times where you can see a guy like Arman Tsarukyan having more success and having a chance of beating Islam. Now, do I think Arman beats Islam? Probably not, but there are some holes in his game, and there is some hope for some of these lightweight contenders to beat Islam. But so far, he has 3 defenses. He's beaten Poirier, he's beaten Oliveira for the belt, he's beaten pound for pound #1 Alexander Volkanovski twice, and that pretty much is enough to propel him to an A grade for me. I think one more solid performance and one more defense of Islam's belt does make him the lightweight GOAT. I already think he is better than Khabib. I think he's more well-rounded. So in my opinion, if you're already contending for GOAT status this early into your UFC championship reign, I know it's been probably over a year now, a year and a half since Islam has been champion, but so far in his championship reign, he has done legendary things, historic things. I think the only thing left for Islam right now is to get one more defense, cement himself as the lightweight GOAT, and then probably move up to welterweight to fight in Edwards or Bilal, depending on who wins that fight, and go for double champ status. So I'm giving Islam an A grade so far into his championship reign. Moving on to welterweight, the current champion right now is Leon Rocky Edwards. Edwards, to me right now, he does have technically 2 defenses, which is good. And at the time when he beat Kamaru Usman, Usman wasn't the pound for pound #1 anymore. But when he first initially beat Usman, he was the pound for pound #1 guy, I believe. But so far in Edwards' career, he does have 2 good title defenses against Usman and against Colby Covington. And that is enough to me to give him a solid B+. Not anything too crazy. Again, his Colby Covington performance wasn't anything too crazy. He didn't necessarily dominate like we thought he would, or dominate in a very spectacular fashion or a very surprising fashion. It more so was just Edwards at range, picking at Covington for 5 rounds and winning a pretty clear decision, but not a very exciting or overly dominant decision. But the Kamaru Usman one was pretty impressive in my opinion. I think going out there and proving the doubters wrong, and going out there and, I would say, not embarrassed, but pretty much outclassed Kamaru Usman in a 5-round decision, I think is very, very impressive at that time. So I'm going to give Edwards just a B+. I don't think his championship reign has been anything too spectacular. I think his accolades fall short just a little bit of Islam Makhachev, But overall, his championship reign has not been a bad one. He's nowhere close to being the welterweight GOAT. We know GSP still holds that pretty firmly right now. Edwards is scheduled to fight Bilal Muhammad at UFC 304, so we'll see how he does against him. If he goes out there and he dominates, then he might get an A grade for me after this. But currently, right now, as things stand, I'm giving him a B+ just because he has a little bit of a dull fighting style, which he could improve on. He's not overly dominant. He kind of just barely edges rounds with his style. If he went out there and just absolutely embarrassed Kamaru Usman and finished him, and the same thing with Colby Covington, then he probably would get an A grade for me or an A-. But since he's barely kind of outpointing these guys, then I'm going to have to settle with just a B+ for Leon Edwards. But we move on to middleweight, and the current champion right now is Dricus du Plessis. And Dricus du Plessis is kind of in the same boat as Ilia Topuria. He has no defenses, so there's not much meat on the bone to grade here. But I'm going to grade this in a similar way that I did Topuria. I'm going to grade what he has done so far as champion. What has he done in the meantime to buffer his name or improve his name? Has he been making headlines? And I think Dricus du Plessis has done a good job of keeping his name relevant while having not any title defenses. I would say he's done just a little bit more than Topuria with the interviews, with his name being so big from the MMA Guru as well, even though he did the interview before he fought Sean Strickland for the belt. But that interview alone kind of still kept him relevant in the MMA space and people still talking about him. So he has done a little bit more than what Topuria has been doing. So I'm going to give him just a C-, which is just a barely a better grade than Ilia Topuria. He also currently has a fight scheduled versus Israel Adesanya, so that helps keep his name relevant right now as well. So I'm going to give him just a C- with the chance of improving. These grades for Topuria and Dricus are very, very soft grades. They can definitely improve once they end up fighting somebody next. And let's say Dricus goes out there and he does beat Adesanya in whatever fashion. I think at the very least, it does raise his grade to just a B- at the very, very least. If he just robs Adesanya, then it might go down. But if he does go out there and just handle business and win a clear decision over Adesanya, then it might just be a B, B-, B+, whatever it might be, depending on the performance. But it automatically puts him into the B category if he does go out there and clearly beat Adesanya. But as of right now, hasn't done much, just been waiting for the next title fight that he's going to have. So I'm giving him just a C-. Moving on to light heavyweight, we do have Alex Poatan Pereira. This one I think is an easy A-. And the reason why I'm not giving him an A like I did Islam is because Islam has more defenses. And that's pretty much just the whole argument right there. Alex Pereira only has Jamal Hill on his resume, and that's literally it. But the way he does beat these guys does give him some credit. And I am going to give him a little bit of leeway here because he did have a good run in middleweight. So I'm going to give him some credit for that as well. But overall, his light heavyweight championship reign has been just pretty short, and we have to see what happens with him this weekend versus Jerry Prohaska. And honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I could give him a lower grade, but I already gave him A-, so I'm going to dig my grave and lay in it. I don't really care. I'm giving him an A- because of he's getting finishes. Poatan right now is a huge name. He's beaten Israel Adesanya. He has had 2 belts in the UFC. That, to me, I will account his middleweight belt into his light heavyweight rankings. If you don't like that, then it's fair, I guess. I don't know. But Poatan overall, beating Jamal Hill, beating a former champion, and making it look easy and having a historic moment with that, I think is enough to give him just an A-. Now, obviously, when it comes to accolades and achievements, he falls short just a little bit. And if I was to base this purely on just accolades and achievements, then he would probably be around the B area, maybe. But with this list, I'm only comparing it to all the other champions, not overall historically, because if I were to compare him to a John Jones or a GSP, obviously he would be lower, but I'm comparing him to what we have now, and I think his reign so far has been a pretty good reign. I'm giving it an A-. But moving on to heavyweight, I'm giving you a bonus one because there is an interim champion in Tom Aspinall, and so far Tom Aspinall does fall in the same boat as a Ilia Topuria as a Dricus du Plessis. No defenses. He's the interim champion, but he is fighting Curtis Blades. And Tom Aspinall right now has been keeping his name pretty relevant. I'm giving him the same grade as Dricus du Plessis, a C- because of the fact that he has been relevant with the trash talk on Jon Jones with Twitter, or with Jon Jones on Twitter, constant interviews. He even went out of his way to approach Jon Jones to try to get a fight or try to entice him to get a fight, even if he was being friendly with it. So Tom Aspinall has been keeping his name in the headlines, in the news. He's been staying relevant. So that to me gives him a C-. Now, when he fights Curtis Blades, and if he does win, I'm willing to give him a higher grade. But as of right now, a C- is just where I'm going to stand with Tom Aspinall because he hasn't had any defenses yet. But moving on to the undisputed champion at heavyweight, Tom Aspinall is a real champion in my eyes, but Jon Jones so far has done absolutely nothing with his championship belt. He beat Cyril Gane in the first round pretty dominantly. It is what it is. But after that, he got injured, tore his pec, and hasn't had a defense since then. Now, if I want to be entirely fair here, I did account Alex Pereira's middleweight belt into his light heavyweight run as well, so I probably have to do the same thing for Jon Jones, but I kind of don't want to do something for Jon Jones. Jon Jones, to me, has been very disappointing with him pretty much ducking Tom Aspinall and really pushing for that Miocic fight. But I don't really feel like being a hypocrite in this video, so I'm going to account Jon Jones's a little bit of his light heavyweight run into his heavyweight run. But to save myself from being called a hypocrite, I'm going to have to give Jon Jones's overall UFC championship grade just an A, maybe an A-, because he did pop for roids, and that really does hurt his credibility. He has ruined UFC events because of his steroid usage. So if you want to not account for that and give him an A+ because he is the quote-unquote GOAT, then go ahead. But since he popped for steroids, I'm going to give him only an just an A. But on the flip side, and what I really wanted to talk about, if we just only isolate just his heavyweight reign so far, I think it's probably an F or a D- at best, because I think ducking the interim champion is L. It's a massive, massive L. It's get good, kid. Come on, fight Tom Aspinall, please. Why are you avoiding the tough competition? You don't want the comp, little bro. Fight Tom Aspinall. I don't know. I'm kind of trolling here, but I do wish that Jon Jones would fight Tom Aspinall. And overall, his heavyweight run, obviously you can't really compare it to his light heavyweight run because it's just two different timelines at this point. Just way too far apart. But if I were to grade Jon Jones's heavyweight run so far, it's probably maybe just a C, because he is staying relevant. He got hurt, he tore his pec. I'm not going to hold that too hard against him, or whatever the phrase is. I'm not going to hang that over his head a little bit too much. I'm not going to, hit him with a car and run away. I'm not going to do any of those things. But let's just leave it at Jon Jones's heavyweight run has not been that good because he has been hurt. But there you guys go. That was every single UFC champion's reign graded. If you enjoyed this video, give me a like, give me a sub, leave a comment down below for me. I would greatly appreciate it. But I'm out of here, guys. Peace.